As always, technical difficulties when doing Facebook Lives. That's the bane of my existence right now. So thank you for joining us. Today, we are going to be interpreting your thyroid lab results so you can have a better understanding of what you're looking at. So we're going to go over what the standard lab value ranges mean, how they got them in the first place, and then what optimal ranges mean, and kind of what different scenarios look like. So you can pair it up with your own and say, yeah, hey, that's me. That's exactly what I'm looking at. And I still get a lot of questions from patients, even though I have the lab and symptom checklist guide that all of you can go to my website and grab, download, have it at your fingertips, what the optimal lab values are. I still get questions like when someone sees a low reverse T3, they'll think that's bad, and it's not bad. There are certain numbers that we want low. There are certain numbers that we want high when we're looking at your lab value ranges. So for those of you who don't know me and you're jumping on for the first time, my name is Amie Hornaman. I'm a functional medicine practitioner, and I specialize in treating thyroid conditions, hormone imbalances, and of course, battling weight and weight loss. So all of that ties back to your thyroid lab. So let's go over them. For those of you watching, you get to see this and you'll have a visual. For those of you listening on the podcast, you'll just have to kind of imagine or grab a piece of paper and write it down. That way you know what we're talking about, but I am breaking out the whiteboard. So let's talk first, TSH. Okay, so TSH is your thyroid stimulating hormone, and I'm going to try to make this universal. However, I know a lot of my listeners in the UK and Australia, you're going to have different conventional lab value ranges. So some of this we're going to have to do percentages, or we're going to have to get you in the upper quadrant. So we'll say the upper third or the upper fourth quadrant of whatever range that you are given on your lab. So when we're talking about conventional standard lab value ranges, they vary from lab to lab. And how we get these, how we get many of these, is that they will take a sampling of a group of people, and they are not filtering out people who are sick or who are healthy. So let's say we take this sampling and we say, okay, out of these 100 people, we're going to look at what their in general TSH is, what their in general free T3 is. But we're not factoring the fact that they're overweight, they don't work out, they eat like garbage. So we're looking at people that are healthy and unhealthy to get this really big, wide, conventional standard lab value range. And like I always say, it's kind of like the side of a barn. So if I give you a ball and I tell you to hit the side of the barn, you're going to hit the barn, you're going to fall into that normal, WNL, within normal limits. And then that drives you crazy because you're like, come on, please. I thought that something was going on. I thought I was out of range. I thought something is wonky with my thyroid. How am I normal? How am I quote unquote normal? And that is because the sampling that they take to get that conventional standard lab value range is huge. It is absolutely huge. So I want to pull up for you first before I give you all of these. I want to actually pull up what the standard ranges are in general. I have most of them memorized because I've seen them so often. But okay, so for TSH, we are looking at usually around 0.4. Now, like I said, every lab can be different, all the way up to 4.5. And I'll show you the whiteboard once we got it all up so you can look at it and you can write it down. And those of you viewing this, you can actually see it and take a little screenshot, and that way you have it. And you can also go and grab the lab and symptom checklist, so you'll have these ranges as well. So TSH 0.4 to 4.5. Optimal, where we find people are at their best. These are happy, healthy, fit people walking around, whether they are euthyroid, meaning they do not have a thyroid condition. They're just healthy with healthy thyroids. Or these are people that we have optimized on proper thyroid hormone replacement therapy. We'd like that TSH below a 2. A lot of healthy people actually be below a 1. So between 0.5 and 1, that's where we'll see usually the best results, medicated, non-medicated. That's where people are really, really feeling their best with the TSH lab value, but we have to also take into account all the other lab values too, because we know, and I've said this many times, you've heard this from me many times, you do not diagnose and you do not dose based on TSH alone. If you do that, you will be screwed. You will be left in a hypothyroid state. You will be suffering with symptoms, or you might not be diagnosed at all because you're going to be told that you're air quote normal. Okay, so going on to free T3, we normally see that at a 2 to a 4.4. Now, optimal 3.5 or above. So you can see how you can very easily land. And I've seen some of them be 2.2 at the baseline. So you get flagged if you're actually a 2. Some of them go all the way down to a 2. So you don't get flagged low until you're at a 1.9. But 2 to 4.4 is the free T3 standard lab value range. And really, we know that you are going to feel your best at 3.5 or above. Now, let's go to free T4, 0.82 to 1.77, sometimes 1.8, sometimes it goes to 1.9. And we know that 1.5 to usually, or I say or above, of course, we don't want you too high, because if everything is too high, that's indicative of hyper. That's a different subject, but 1.5 or above, let's just say. And we're going to go over scenarios too. So hang in there, because some of you might have a low free T4 and be freaking out, but that's okay. If you're on T3 medication, your free T3 is good. Your TSH is below 2 and your reverse T3 is in the optimal range. So we will get to those scenarios in just a moment. So speaking of reverse T3, some labs start, I've seen some start all the way down at like a 6 or a 7. Some will start at a 9 and go up to a 24 or a 25. Way too high. Way too high. We really like this below a 12. I'll accept below a 15 in some points, in some different scenarios, and we'll go over those scenarios where even, coming in at like a 13, 14 is okay if your free T3 is optimal, if your TSH is optimal, if you feel good. So we have to take into account your symptoms as well. So we have to take into account symptoms as well as lab values. We'll get into that at the end. I just want to touch on what your labs mean first, right? So we can definitely look at total T3. I don't always order it, but sometimes it's really nice to see what that total T3 is. And I'll get to the percentages in a minute for my out-of-country viewers. The total T3 we want in that upper quadrant. So if someone comes to me and we happen to get a total T3 done and it's at, let's say, an 80, that even means that your free T3 is going to be in the basement if your total T3 is low as well. So total T3, we'd like to see about 150 or above if you're in this reference range. I don't really care about free T or total T4, to be quite honest. It's really just not all that important in the grand scheme of things, because we like to look at the free and we like to look at the whole picture and we like to look at your symptoms. So that's more important than total T4. If it's ordered, hey, bonus, whatever. If it's not, I'm not really overly concerned about it. And then we have your antibodies, TPO, TGA. Those are usually, and I've seen this across the board. So thyroid peroxidase, thyroglobulin antibodies. I have seen that with the standard lab value range be less than 20. I've seen it less than 34. It kind of goes all over the place depending on what lab you use. But again, what's optimal? 0. 0, 0. We want no antibodies whatsoever. Now, sometimes we'll get a couple antibodies showing up. People will come in with 2s or 3s. Sometimes that's just lab error. Sometimes it's just picking up inflammation. Sometimes it's picking up antibodies from another autoimmune condition, which we still take into account, because autoimmune begets autoimmune. So where we see one, we see more than one. But in general, this is what you are looking at. I know there's going to be a reflection. I know there's going to be a little flare here. Okay. So now you guys who are watching can take a snapshot. So your TSH, we want that less than a 2. The free T3, we want it 3.5 or above. So for my people that have a different range for free T3, and I've seen this when working with patients out of country, and like I said, in the UK, in Australia, totally different range for free T3. We want it in the upper quadrant. So break whatever your range is into 4, and you want it in the upper quadrant. So let's just use some random numbers, right? Let's say 0 to 100. I want you 75 or above. That's the upper quadrant, the upper quarter of what that lab range can be broken down into. And on the note of free T3, I say 3.5 or above. That does not mean that you have to stop at 4.4. Many people are optimized at a 5. Some people are optimized at a 6. Some people are optimized at a 7. And unless you're elderly, we really don't care what that free T3 goes to when you're feeling good. And as long as you are not experiencing hyperthyroid symptoms, then we say, okay, hey, if you come to me and your free T3 is a 7 and your TSH is let's say a 0.5, and we'll get into suppression in a second. And let's say your free T4 comes in at a 0.8 and your reverse T3 is a 6, and you tell me, did I point to the right one? Yeah. I feel fantastic. My antibodies are down. Maybe they were high before and they're coming down. Maybe they're at a 0. You feel fantastic. That means that you are at your optimal free T3 level. So yay. So 3.5 or above, upper quadrant. Can you crest over the upper limit? Yes. Yes, you can. And you can still feel good even going over that upper limit of free T3. Because remember that T3 is your active thyroid hormone. That is what's binding to the cell. That is what's getting into the cell. That's what's giving you metabolism and growing your hair and strengthening your nails and giving you a mood and allowing you to sleep. All of that is working with your T3, your active thyroid hormone. So if this is a little bit elevated or you're on T3 therapy, that's what we want you where you are optimal. And sometimes it takes a little bit of trial and error to find that. Free T4, 1.5 or above. Again, the upper quadrant. So for my listeners overseas, you have to take your range and chop it up. And we'll get to where free T4 doesn't really mean that much if you're low in just a second. But in general, we're talking general terms here. Upper quadrant, again, if you're going 0 to 100, we want you 75 or above. That's just an example, just the upper quadrant. Reverse T3, we want low. So TSH and reverse T3 are the two that we want low. Well, your antibodies, we want low too. So reverse T3 is when that is high, that will drop your free T3 level and it will prevent T3 from entering the cell. I always like to use the analogy of a bouncer. So it's like a little bouncer outside of your cell, and it's saying that the T3 thyroid hormone cannot get in. It's not allowed in, has to stay out. So your free T3 will drop. Your total T3 might be just fine, but your free T3 will drop. Your reverse T3 will block the action of the thyroid hormone. So we really want that below a 12. Now, like I said earlier, sometimes I will accept it below a 15, and many functional medicine practitioners will say under 15 is completely acceptable. And I will accept under a 15. I'll accept 13, 14, 15 as long as free T3 is good, TSH is below a 2, and your symptoms are down, and you're telling me that you're feeling great. If you're not feeling great, then we're going to look into what could be causing that reverse T3 to go up. Conversion issues will cause that to go up. So things like dysregulated cortisol, too high of insulin, estrogen dominance, a non-optimized iron and ferritin panel. So there's many things that will cause reverse T3 to go up. Inflammation. I do have a separate video and a separate podcast on that. So I encourage you to go back and listen to that. We will put that link in the show notes so you can know exactly what pushes up your reverse T3 anyways. And there's a variety of things that do so because it's a survival mechanism. When we're sick, when we're in the ICU, reverse T3 will go up because it basically is telling our body, listen, you don't need a metabolism right now. The last thing you need to be doing is burning fat. You need to survive. But when we are surviving just fine and we're not in the ICU and we're not sick, we don't want reverse T3 elevated because it will do just that. It will drop your metabolism and it will prevent your thyroid hormones from working properly at the cellular level. Now, like I said, total T3, if it's ordered, that's fine. Would I spend extra money on it? No, but you want that 150 or above, or again, in the upper quadrant as well. If I'm splitting in the fours, maybe even a little bit higher, really, really close to the top end of the lab value range for total T3 and TPOTG antibodies. We want it at 0. So many people are coming in with maybe a 16 and their doctors say, no, you don't have Hashimoto's. And I say, well, you have antibodies present. So that means at any point in time, those antibodies can crest whatever that lab value range is. Let's say it's 20 is the cutoff. Yeah, you can go to 21 pretty quickly. And then guess what? Hashi. So you're telling me with 16 antibodies, you don't have Hashi, but 20 you do? Former little antibody guys makes the difference of a diagnosis. We want those at absolute 0. Absolute 0. So let's go over some different scenarios that we can look at. I wish I could pull up my labs for you, but I kind of remember them. I posted them in the Attuned Thyroid group. Oh gosh, this is probably during COVID, March, April, something like that. And mine are pretty interesting to look at because if you were a conventional doctor and you looked at my lab values, you would see that you would say to me, you're hyper. You would say, we're going to drop your medication. You are hyperthyroid. And this whole scenario is not cool. But as a functional medicine practitioner, as a thyroid expert, I know that it is cool. So because I am T3 only, and for many of my listeners, those of you on T3 only, or just taking T3 in general, if you're taking Armor, if you're taking any kind of NDT, and maybe you're even taking NDT and you have that paired up with a little bit of T3, a little bit of leothyrene, a little bit of cytomel, that's going to push your TSH down. So that is going to suppress your TSH. It might be very, very, very suppressed. Mine is 0.007, I believe it was. Yeah. And I've seen that since in many of my patients, especially those taking T3 only, that TSH level goes down. Now, we've said before that TSH can go down even on T4. Even if you're stuck on Synthroid, stuck on Levo, and you're on T4 only, that TSH can still go down, but it's more likely to be suppressed when you're on some kind of T3 therapy. We want it suppressed post-cancer. So if you have been diagnosed with thyroid cancer, you had a partial or total thyroidectomy, we want that TSH suppressed to prevent new tissue growth. So actually that's really good when it's a 0.0 something. But when it's 0.00 something, doctors tend to freak out a little bit and call it hyper. And this is why we cannot use the TSH alone to diagnose or dose. You have to look at the big picture. So then moving on to free T3, not taking your T3 medication before you go and get your labs done. We like around 18 to 20, I prefer 24 hours without T3 in your system to get a clear and accurate picture of what your free T3 level actually is. That free T3 level can be, like I said earlier, a 4 or a 5. So mine's around a 4.5 or 5. That's my optimal. My free T4 is actually low. Why? Because I'm on T3 only. So if you give me T4 medication, that free T4 will go up, but my hypo symptoms will come back and my reverse T3 will go up. Hopefully you're following all this so far. If you're not, ask me a question. So free T4 low, don't care. Why? Because free T3 is up, TSH is down, reverse T3, mine was a 6. Reverse T3 is below a 12. Antibodies are at 0. And last question, everyone, how do you feel? What are your symptoms? So if you have that panel, if you have those numbers for your labs, and I ask you, how do you feel? And you tell me, I feel like I'm crawling out of my skin and I'm jittery and I'm anxious all the time and I can't sleep and I don't know what's going on. Maybe you're pushing into hyper. And you're losing weight uncontrollably and your hair is falling out. Maybe you're pushing into hyperthyroid. So we got to take a look at that. And then we also test for Graves' disease in that case. If you have that number, if you have that profile of all those numbers that I talked about, with TSH being low, free T4 being low, you're on T3 medication only, your free T3 is elevated, your reverse is down, your antibodies at 0, and you tell me that you feel great, like you're at a nice steady weight, your energy is good through the day, you're not jittery, you're not anxious, you're pretty cool, then we leave it alone and we say that is your optimal, because it all comes back to you as a person and how you feel. Now, I'll give you an example of my friend's mom. Just had a total thyroidectomy a couple of weeks ago. I didn't expect her TSH to elevate this high, but her TSH is a 35. Free T3 is actually flagged low. I think it was like a 1.8. Free T4, I forget. Once I saw those two numbers, it really didn't even matter at that point. So to get those numbers down, and considering it is post-thyroidectomy, what do you think she's put on? Levo. 112 milligrams of Levo, micrograms of Levo. So we need to see how she does on that, but we most likely will have to add in a little bit of T3, because a free T3 level that is low, that's kind of dangerously low, especially with an elevated TSH. So over time, and do you think they tested her reverse? No, they didn't. So over time, we will want to test her reverse T3 since she is taking T4. T4 converts to reverse. So we want to check that reverse and make sure that that's low. We want it below a 12 optimally. We want that TSH to come down. It has to come way, way down. And that has to drop under 2. We do not want tissue growth. Actually, I would like it below a 1, quite honestly. So that's going to take some time. But you can see with that picture, she swung from hyper. She was hyper with Graves, took the thyroid out. Now she's deep into hypo, all the way to the other end of the spectrum. And that's an extreme case that I'm giving you. Another scenario would be someone comes in with a TSH of a 2.1, a free T3 of a 3. Almost there, not quite. A free T4 of a 1.4. Almost there, but not quite. And then the reverse is 25. What do you think is happening? Does it even matter that they have good free T? I'm surprised they have a 3 for free T3. I would expect it to be low, but it doesn't matter because their symptoms are that of hypo. They're gaining weight. They're tired. Their hair's falling out. They're moody. They can't sleep. They're in a hypothyroid state despite the TSH being just over that level, just over that optimal level, despite the free T3 being so darn close to optimal, despite the free T4 being so darn close to optimal. The reverse is elevated. It's blocking the action. It's blocking conversion. And it's creating this hypothyroid state. So subclinical, maybe, but it's creating hypothyroid state. So to get that reverse down, we have to look at all the factors that come into play. We have to look at the cortisol. We have to look at the iron. We have to look at insulin. We have to look at estrogen levels. And we may have to add in a little bit of T3 to bring the T3 up and reverse T3 down. Hopefully that's all making sense for you guys. Okay, so another scenario. TSH, let's say TSH is coming in suppressed. It's coming in at a 1, right? Your free T4 is coming in at a 1.5. Reverse is a 12. No antibodies whatsoever. But your free T3 is a 1.8. That's a problem. T3 is the active thyroid hormone. We need that to get into the cells. Now, this person presents with no weight gain. The only issue is low energy and definitely gut issues. What do? You still add in a little bit of T3 because we want that free T3 number to come up. I don't care about the other numbers. Yes, they are optimal. The most important is that free T3. It's in the tank. It's getting dangerously low. We have to think about your cardiac situation. All organs, every single organ, including your heart, needs T3 thyroid hormone. We got to get that up. Got to bring that up for health, for life, for energy, for digestion, for constipation. So there's a variety of different scenarios that we can give you and that you may fall into. But the bottom line is, who are you and what are your symptoms? That's the most important factor in all of this. If you feel great with suboptimal thyroid levels, not the free T3 being low, but if you feel great with suboptimal thyroid levels, maybe we let it go. Maybe we say, okay, if you're feeling good, then you just keep riding it out. If you feel like garbage with a whole bunch of hypothyroid symptoms and you have almost darn near optimal thyroid levels, we pay attention to you because you're a person and you have symptoms and we have to get to the root cause of what's causing it. Maybe it's your thyroid, maybe it's something else, but let's take it into consideration. Maybe your optimal is not the functional optimal. Maybe your optimal, even though you're cresting 3.5 with your free T3, your optimal is a 5 and we need to get you a little bit higher. I know that understanding your lab values and where they fall in the conventional standard lab value range and then the targeted functional optimal range is very difficult because you're hearing things from a ton of different sources. You're hearing things from your doctor. And I'll tell you, even those, we recommend using Alta Labs when you don't have insurance or your insurance is not covering certain labs, or you're going to get a huge copay, you're going to get a $500 bill or a $1,000 bill. We do recommend using Alta, but please keep in mind that Alta does not give you optimal ranges. It's still giving you the standard conventional ranges. Now, each lab is different, but Alta Labs, as great as they are, and we as functional medicine practitioners recommend them to patients that need that, or if we need a certain marker here or there that your doctor won't test. A lot of you are struggling getting your doctors to even test reverse T3, so you have to order that yourself. Please note that you're still looking at it from a conventional standpoint in Alta. And you still need what is optimal. You still need the optimal ranges at hand to be able to compare your labs to what you're seeing on your lab work and what that range actually is. So I know it gets confusing. The worst thing possible is when you get that call back saying your W&L, you're within normal limits, your lab work looks fine, there's no problems. That's where you need someone skilled to look at it with you and to paint that whole picture and to take you into consideration. So that's what I do when I'm working with patients is we sit down and we look at all that. And that way we can build a treatment protocol for you and change your medication if necessary. And look at the other factors that are driving certain lab values wonky, up or down, or where they're not supposed to be. That way it's a little bit less confusing for you. But I hope this session, our time together here, has given you a little bit of direction, a little bit more confidence in looking at your own set of labs. And definitely go to, in the description or in the show notes, you will see the link to the lab and symptom checklist. If you haven't grabbed that yet, I urge you to do so, because that will give you all the different labs that you need to order. Make sure that your doctor orders all of those too. You need all of them. We just went over all of the standard ranges and optimal ranges, even for my peeps in the UK and Australia. Remember the quadrants, but you have to get them all. I know overseas that you have a hard time getting reverse T3. You normally have to pay out of pocket for that, but I encourage you to do so that you have that whole picture. Without all of those labs, there's no way we can have that entire picture of what your thyroid is doing, and we can't accurately pair that up with your symptoms. Now, are there other labs that I would like to get? Yes, that's a total other video. That's another podcast. We will get to that. But this, I just wanted to focus on those thyroid labs, because so many of you are questioning when you get your labs back, you're questioning your reverse T3. Let's say it's coming in and it's flagged normal, but you're at an 18 or you're at a 20. Some of you panic when your reverse T3 is low. I say, no, that's good. Some of you panic when your TSH drops low because your doctor panicked and said that you're over medicated. No. Let's not let them drop your medication out when you're feeling good. So hopefully this helped you to understand a little bit more. I do want to get to your questions because I know there's a lot of good ones in here. So let's do this. Donna, you're back from the beach. I like seeing you here. Bonnie, hi. Tara, hi. And Donna, you're saying you don't feel symptoms based on TSH level. Whether your TSH is 0.1 or 100, it doesn't give you symptoms. Symptoms are felt based on free T3, reverse T3 levels. And those are the two most important tests. Honestly, that's a great point, Donna. I don't even care if you get a TSH done. most of the time. I mean, when we're first diagnosing you, if you come to me and you're completely undiagnosed and we're looking at your symptoms and I go, we need a full thyroid panel done on you. I want the full thyroid panel done on you. But after we start treating and let's say, again, another scenario, let's say hypothetically you come in, you're undiagnosed, you have a ton of symptoms. Again, your TSH is coming in, WNL, it's coming in at like let's say a 2.5 or a 3. But there are markers such as low free T3, suboptimal. When I say low, I mean less than optimal. Less than optimal free T3. You have some antibodies. You're in stage 1, 2, 3 of Hashimoto's. We're just starting to see the thyroid labs change because of the presence of Hashimoto's. At that point of time, when we treat you, medicate you, start to get you optimized, I don't even care if you get a TSH again. Now, will it get thrown in? Of course, because whether you get a panel done and you say full thyroid panel from your doctor, you're ordering a package from Ulta, TSH is always in there. Then you can do a la carte. You could get a reverse T3 and a free T3 and just look at those two. But like Donna's saying, those are the most important markers. I actually don't even care about the other ones once we start to move into optimization. They're interesting to look at. It's kind of just from a, I don't know, information standpoint, from a medical standpoint. I kind of like to see what the numbers do. And I like to be able to paint that whole picture and have scenarios like that where the TSH will be suppressed like mine, the free T4 will actually be low like mine. I like to see what happens there because it's fascinating. But to dose you and change your dose, we pair symptoms up with free T3 and reverse T3 because like Donna said, you're not going to feel it. You're not going to feel TSH being elevated necessarily. In fact, my friend's mom, who has a TSH of 35, is actually feeling hyper. She's feeling very hyper right now still. So what does that TSH actually tell us? Now that her free T3 is concerning, that means she is hypo, but she feels hyper. So this takes some detective work to really figure this out. Not that much detective work. She's going to need some she's going to need some T3 medication. You can't take a thyroid out and just put someone on T4 only. Again, another topic for another day. Susie, your TSH is 0.001. Yeah, I think you might be lower than mine. I'm going to have to check that. We're going to have to compare. Free T3 is 4.4. Is that, did you take your T3 medication? Dawn asked you that below. She's on it. She's on it for me. Susie, how many hours between your last dose of T3 and your labs? Because your free T3 is 4.4. I'm totally cool with that. Even if that is like 24 hours from your taking your 25 micrograms of T3, if that is 24 hours from that, that's fine. I'm good with that totally. But I guess the big question would be, how do you feel? And you said, as long as I feel good. Yes. And just out of curiosity, when did you take your T3 med? Reverse T3 is a 14. TPO, you still have some antibodies hanging out. Did they do the TGA? That would be my question too. So Dawn asked you that. Miss Lane is here. Hi, you're taking your notes. That's good. Missing your what'd you say? You're missing your progesterone HRT for 2 weeks, feeling crabby. Why is that, Miss Elaine? Did they not fill it for you? Or are you just like off of it? Are you doing like a ZRT panel? You don't have to be off of it for 2 weeks. Helene, hi. You started to write, but you did not finish. Donna, if you feel good, your low TSH is irrelevant, totally irrelevant. Don't even have to test it really. And Mary, what should our temperature be to be optimal? What does it mean if it's low, 97.8 in the morning and only 98.1 in the early evening? Whew, Mary, this is a good question. Okay, so with temperature, some people just run low. So even though I'm optimal on T3 only, and I take a high dose of T3, I'm open with you guys about that, my temperature will still be a little bit low, even though I actually run hot. That makes sense. I hate the heat. I get warm very easily, but my body temp will always be a little bit low. So then you have to take all of the vitals, Mary. So we like to take your heart rate too. And I've talked about that. A lot of people panic after they take T3 regarding their heart rate going up. But a lot of times it goes from too low to actually normal. Like when you're resting, a non-athlete, like non-pro athlete resting heart rate should kind of hang out around like an 80 or 90. And a lot of you are like 60 or 70, and then you freak out when it hits 90 after you take your T3 medication. No, that's pretty normal. My patient today said after she took T3, she got warm. She had just a feeling of warmth. She didn't take her body temperature. She had the feeling of warmth. Yes, that's normal too. So Mary, I would say, I mean, your body temp is going to be a little bit low in the morning, but obviously we want it, 98, 98.6, yeah, something like that. 97.8, I wouldn't worry about, but we have, again, the whole picture, Mary. So symptoms, how do you feel? What's your free T3 level? What medication are you on? Are you taking all of your vitals? Are you taking your blood pressure? Are you taking your temperature? Are you taking your heart rate? Are you taking it first thing in the morning? Are you taking it after your T3 dosing? Are you multi-dosing through the day? So when it does go to 98.1 in the early evening, did you take a T3 dose at like 2 or 3? So that's important too. And we want to see that go up. And Dawn, if you want to jump in with the body temp too, feel free. We want to ultimately see your body temperature increase over time, along with your resting heart rate, and your blood pressure will naturally go up a little bit, especially those of you who are severely hypo and have low blood pressure readings. So taking vitals, pairing it up with your symptoms, pairing it up with your labs, that gives us that whole picture. Christy, my antibodies TPAB are at 50. My PCM thinks vitamin D will be enough to drop it. Synthroid only, prescribed 137. All right, wait, let me stop there before I get into your labs. Vitamin D, really fantastic for any kind of autoimmune condition. We want it in the optimal range. I know this is a battle going on. People are sending me Harvard studies saying that people are pushing their vitamin D too high. I could show you as many studies from doctors like Stephen Gundry saying they like it at 100 or above. I'm pretty stoked at like 70, 80 or above. Definitely don't want you at 30. That's way too low. So I can see where vitamin D would be supportive, but it's not necessarily going to be the answer to drop your TPAB. Okay, so that being said, Synthroid only, man, that really sucks because T4 only usually does not work, Miss Christie. So what I find is that patients on T4 only still suffer with hypothyroid symptoms. They're still gaining weight. They're still fatigued. Their hair is still falling out. Just doesn't really cut it. About 1 of every 100 people will do okay on T4 only. So your free T4 is 1.25, TSH is 0.9, free T3 is 2.5, which is still too low. Looking to see what reverse T3 was. Always tired, gaining weight. Hey, didn't I call that? I call that even before I read the rest of your post. Struggle to sleep. Not sure vitamin D will be the magic fix, but hopeful no, it won't. Chances are pretty darn good that you need some free T or some T3 med because your free T3 is low. 2.5 is low. We do not want it there. And it would be interesting to see what your reverse is for sure. Elaine, you've been sick for the last month. Oh, girl, you can't even get into the city. I know you guys are on lockdown over there, and you're still up so early and you're sick. Elaine, you need sleep. You need to get some sleep. You can always watch the replay. You can sleep in. Elaine, make sure you're taking your vitamin D and your zinc to get your immune system up. Donna, it's likely you have high reverse T3 level on 130. Yeah, that's why I want to see your reverse. Plenty of T4 going in, yet free T3 is too low. So yeah, I would bet money too. We should place a bet. I did this with Jessica too. We placed a bet on what her reverse T3 would come back at based on our other lab values because reverse is always last. So I think I was dead on. So if I had to place a bet, Christy, I'm guessing your reverse is going to come back at, I'm going to say 19. I'm going to say 19 or 20 because you're on way too much T4 medication and that's going to convert over to reverse and your free T3 is way too low, like Donna said. So I'm placing my bet at 19. If anybody else wants to roll in, place a bet, have at it. Christy, you're going to have to get back to me and tell me what that reverse comes in when you order it yourself. Donna, you agreeing with 19? I'm saying 19, 20. That's what I'm saying. And then if your doctor orders it, Christy, you're going to be told that everything is normal and it's within normal limits. Because remember that reverse goes up to 24 or 25 on most labs. So you're not even going to get flagged, but that's going to be way too high. So what we would do is drop your T4 down, add in T3. The T3 med, leocytamel would bring, per your doctor's orders, right? I can't talk medication because you're not my patient. I'm just saying, hypothetically, what I would do in this situation, if you were my patient, would be to add in T3 to bring up your free T3, to bring down your reverse T3, but also to drop the T4 med down so that less of that is converting over to reverse. You don't need that high of T4. It's ridiculous. It's just crazy. Oh, you're going for over 20. All right. Christy, all right, you're looking. Can you find it? Did you just get it done? Or I missed that. So I don't know if you got it done with all of that or if you need to get it done. Like Donna posted, you can go to altalabtest.com, altawellness.com. Alta Labs is where we recommend people. It's by far the least expensive order your own lab test site. And it's so inexpensive. I want to say reverse is like $34 and they're always throwing out 20% off coupons. So you can order your own reverse, Christy, for nothing. And then if that is the case that you still have to get it done, you have to get back to me and tell me what the number is. If you're looking for it, as in you have it somewhere and you just can't find it, then you're just going to have to post it so that Donna and I can know who won the bet. So there. Okay. Thank you. I will do that. You got it, Christy. Okay. All right. So again, hopefully this clears up a lot of confusion for all of you. And I know, a lot of times people are listening and you guys are seasoned veterans. Donna, Elaine, my goodness, you've been on here, this like the back of your hand too. But many people are new, and many people that watch this replay or listen to the podcast are new. And this is all new for them. And it's confusing. And just like, Mary, just like you said, let's see, reverse T3 is not back after 12 days. Yeah, it takes a while sometimes, Mary, for reverse to come back. But just like you gave earlier, let me go back to you here. No, I'm sorry. It was Susie. Just like, Susie, you're giving your set of labs, but we need to know when you took your T3 med, but that's the perfect thing. Like it gets confusing because you start looking at this and you go, okay, like, is this okay as long as I feel good? Because Susie, you might've been told that you are pushing into hyperthyroid state and they probably actually want to drop your medication. I'm guessing, Susie, that they want to drop your T3 med and possibly your T4 med because they're going to look at that TSH. They're going to freak out because it's suppressed. They're going to look at your T3. They're going to freak out because you're at that you're almost flagged high. God forbid you're almost flagged high, depending on which lab you're using. If you are at a 4.4 and, then you end up getting your labs dropped and you drop into a hypo state. So I know this gets really confusing when you're doing this on your own. So that's why I really hope that this plus the guide helps. I encourage you to share this with people that share it on your page, because I guarantee you are not the only one in your circle that is suffering from hypothyroidism, from Hashimoto's, and are looking at their labs. Probably half of the labs are even done. You don't even have the full picture. Like Christy, we need the reverse. And you don't even know what they mean, because this one's low and this one's getting flagged low, but this one looks low, but it's not getting flagged low. It's not red. This one's green. But what do you mean it's green? Green means normal, but Amie said it's not normal. Go buy Optimal Labs only and pair it up with your symptoms. And of course, if you want to work together, you can always visit my website at amiehornaman.com. You can book a discovery call totally free just to learn more. You can watch the intro video and learn more how I work with patients. And yes, right now I can prescribe because I have partnered up with a nurse practitioner who is completely awesome and open-minded. We think the same. She will prescribe whatever we need for you. So once we do your consultation and get everything down pat, hey, these are the med changes that are needed. You don't have to be stuck doctor shopping. You don't have to be stuck begging your doctor to give you the right medication to get you into the optimal range. We can do that for you. So a couple more questions I will get to, and then I will go and I'll let you sleep, Elaine, because you need some sleep. Okay, Linda, I want to grab yours. Levo only 86, TSH 0.37, T4 free is 1.3, reverse T3 is a 17. You need free T3. You need it. Doctor won't even look at for anything but the free T4, and won't prescribe anything but T4 meds. So Linda, obviously you need to reach out to me because we need to do your free T3 tests, and we probably need to, T4 only doesn't work. It just doesn't. Yeah, your TSH is low and your free T4 is meh. Okay. I don't like your reverse at all. You're pushing too much of that T4 into reverse. You know that, Linda. So go to my website, book a call. We will chat because we need to get you straightened out. Sandra, I know it's a whirlwind, but that's why I'm here, to try to sort this all out. I encourage you to subscribe to the Thyroid Fix podcast on any podcast platform that you have. Sandra, that will help you so much to go through all of my podcasts. Learn. Just keep learning. You will understand your body better. I promise. And last question. Helene, you're saying in August, I tested TSH 106. Okay. Free T3 is 1.4, my dear. Free T4 is 0.23. Wait a minute. Reverse T3 is less than 5. TPO is 124. This is crazy numbers right there. Was put on Armour and Cytomel. 1 month later, my doctor took me off Cytomel because my free T3 went high to 4.7, still on Armour, but feel terrible. So, Helene, a couple things. Number one, did you take your meds the morning of your labs where you got that free T3 at a 4.7? Because if you take T3 medication the morning of your labs, or even I don't even like it within 24 hours, even if you took it like 6 hours before, 12 hours before, it can push that number up to where this exactly happens. You get your medication dropped and then you feel like garbage, just like Helene is. So, you need a new doc. I mean, I'd love to see your other labs when your free T3 went to 4.7. But even if you tell me, hey, my free T3 was 4.7 and I didn't take my thyroid meds for 24 hours, but I felt great, then guess what, Helene, that's your optimal. I would love to see the rest of your labs too. So please feel free to reach out to me, Helene. I would love. You did take your medication. You need to get retested. But see, now you're already screwed because your doctor dropped your Cytomel out. So you might have to call me. We might have to change your meds. We might have to do some retesting the proper way without the T3 in the morning or 24 hours beforehand. I'll accept 18, but I like 24. When I take mine, I go full 24, if not even a little bit more than. Without T3 medication, because I know I'm going to be high anyways on a high dose of T3. I'm T3 only, so I'm careful not to push that too high. And even though I call the shots with my own meds, I still don't want to freak anybody out with crazy. So you're getting retested again November 11th. Elaine, make sure you do not take your Armour that morning. And I guarantee you, so if you took it and you got a 4.7. So normally what we can do is actually take off a third, which math is not my strong suit. So I'm guessing if you were a 4.7, you were probably really like a 3, 2.9 or 3 without the meds. And especially now that they dropped your Cytomel out, you're probably going to come in at like a 2.5 or your Cytomel. Yeah. Okay. That was it. Okay. I think we got all the questions covered. Yes. Again, thank you all for listening. Thank you for watching. Please share this. And if you listen on iTunes, Apple Podcasts, I know it's Apple Podcasts now. I'm old school, iTunes. Can you please, if you listen to the Thyroid Fix podcast on iTunes, can you please leave a review? I will read them all. I will read them on air. I will read them myself. And I appreciate it so much. It will be so much appreciated because Apple loves that. And then they start to push the podcast up and then it gets out to more people that need it. So you all have a good week. Thank you for listening. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for posting. Thank you for writing a review in advance. And as always, if you need me, you can go to my website at amiehornaman.com. I will see you guys next week. Take care.